The last time Joe Biden and Donald Trump were in the same room together, our own Kristen Welker moderating that final debate between them, managing to keep them on track and maintaining decorum. Instead of having another verbal food fight, you saw it right there. You don't need a mute button if you've got Kristen Welker in charge. Kristen, joining me now. No, and I'm sure that the moderators tonight, who are both great correspondents, are going to handle it the same way. You didn't even need the mute button. It just was a reaction, I think, to that first CNN debate last time. Was it? Yeah, the food fight. Anyway, Kristen, let's talk about what it feels like to be on that stage, the pressure, and how do you moderate a debate between these two men, not knowing which candidate is going to go off on the other, looking at the trigger points. What are you tracking tonight? What are you looking for?
Well, Andrea, it's a great question. Thank you for playing that clip. Look, I'm going to be looking for a couple of things. I do think the format that you mentioned is going to be center stage as much as these two candidates. Andrea, the fact that both candidates will be muted when the other one is speaking, that is going to be significant. Now, I should say that during my debate, which was the second debate, remember, it came on the heels of that first debate in 2020 when then President Donald Trump was bombastic. He interrupted then Vice President Joe Biden multiple times, more than 140 times to be exact. And he believed that backfired. His campaign believed at the time that backfired. I've been talking to allies who are close to him who say, look, that debate still sits heavily and weighs heavily on him because he knows that it backfired on him. So he showed up at the second debate, the debate that I moderated. He did have a more measured tone. He was still feisty. He took the gloves off, but he allowed Joe Biden to speak. So I am getting signals that is the plan tonight. Will he stick to that plan? We'll have to wait and see. In terms of the rules tonight, though, I think we got a little bit of a preview because while the mics were not cut off throughout the entirety of the debate that I moderated, they were cut off at the conclusion of those 2-minute opening statements at the beginning of each segment. And that did allow for the conversation to move forward in the beginning of each segment. Then they were open during the open discussion portion of the debate. So I think the question, Andrea, will any of that sort of raw back and forth that you just played get muted if the mics are cut off? Throughout the course of the debate, we'll have to wait and see. For his part, Joe Biden is aiming to show strength. He's aiming to answer and counter voters who have questions about whether he has what it takes to serve another 4 years in office. It's safe to say that the stakes could not be higher for these two men tonight heading into this debate.
Are you surprised, a little bit surprised? I asked Michael Tyler about this before. Understandably, he didn't want to deal with it head on. But are you surprised that in that new Washington Post poll, more people think that Donald Trump would preserve democracy than Joe Biden? It was Donald Trump, actually, who was involved in January 6th and the attempt to overturn an election.
That's why it is surprising, Andrea, because what have we heard from former President Donald Trump since January 6th? And since he entered this campaign, quite frankly, he has tried to make the case, including when I interviewed him back in September, that it's Joe Biden who is the threat to democracy. He makes that argument for a range of different reasons, including because of the criminal cases that he is facing. Now, of course, those cases were brought by federal grand juries, and of course, he was just convicted in a New York courtroom. That was brought by New York authorities, not, of course, by the Justice Department. But the bottom line is clearly what you have is people believing a set of facts based on where they get their news, how they consume their news. And that's why tonight I think is going to be so significant, because undoubtedly, Andrea, President Biden is going to try to make what he sees as a critical case, that it's Donald Trump who's the threat to democracy because of January 6th, because he has yet to concede, Andrea, the last election, which is, of course, the hallmark of this democracy. So how does he use it? When does he use it? We'll have to wait and see. But I think that is going to be a key focus for President Biden tonight, to try to shift some of those poll numbers around and gain some ground.
And it's such a good point that you're making, that people have been watching their niche media, reading their niche media. But in this case, this debate is going to be available on so many platforms that it's, the facts will be out there for people to see. How they interpret it is another question.
You're absolutely right about that. And I think that, again, is where the role of the moderators is going to be so significant. Their role is not necessarily to fact check, but to make sure that they are guiding the conversation in a way that allows each candidate to fact check each other. And, of course, the post analysis will be significant, where we'll all be on hand to do plenty of fact checking as well.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.